So here again is another overview of yet another 365 days worth of digital entertainment. Another glass of member berry juice fermented for over 10 years to make you a bit too tipsy to the point where you might start texting messages to your ex. Box 360. 2009 was another year of fine games for sure, but let's cast an eye on what was happening in the world that year. Don't worry, I find history boring too. This will be short, and then we can get back to these lovely video games. The big celebrity news of the year was the death of the king of pop himself, one Michael Jackson. Jackson was, I'm sure you'll remember, an absolutely brilliant musician, though due to being pushed by his family at a young age, he was very odd indeed. Now, I'm not going to get into why he was odd, you know the reasons why. Anyway, he died after getting a fatal combination of drugs from his physician. Now here's his fans acting totally normally, grieving about someone they've never met. An investigation by some of the newspapers found that MPs were being very naughty with their expenses. Seriously, these people well and truly took the Michael Gove. Seriously guys, a duck house on taxpayers' money when you earn what you do? Thankfully, MPs these days are far less corrupt. I couldn't finish that sentence. Christmas and the airwaves were jollified by the sound of the Christmas number one, which was Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine from 1992. So what happened here then? Well, an internet campaign was launched to stop the procession of X Factor singles getting to number one on that particular week. It may seem very trivial, but it was a big old finger up at a cynical marketing machine built entirely on the hopes and aspirations of poor, disposable dreamers. Rage Against the Machine, indeed, even if the song's original meaning related to the Los Angeles race riots, was a little bit forgotten in favour of, annoying Simon Cowell a little bit. Finally, Up came out, and if you can watch these opening scenes without sobbing big snotty wails, then you, sir, are a robot. It is a brilliant movie. In games news, Just Dance had its first release. It was Ubisoft's sort of FIFA for little girls and women who want tighter glutes by showing off. It was released on the Nintendo Wii, and get this, it had an iteration on the Wii right up until Just Dance 2020. By comparison, the last Just Dance game on the Wii successor, the Wii U, was Just Dance 2019. How weird. Boys who wanted to move their buttocks with the aid of plastic accessories could always have tried Tony Hawk's Ride. Yes, the sequel to the skateboarding mega franchise. Well, I mean, they could have tried it anyway, but it was terrible. It didn't bloody work. And it deservedly flopped as a result. Grand Theft Auto 4 had two fantastic bits of DLC release, which effectively gave you two whole new games set on the same familiar map. The Lost and the Damned had you taking part in a biker gang and somehow was more dour and dreary than the main game. The other DLC, The Ballad of Gay Tony, however, added high camp and exciting missions to proceedings and is definitely the best story out of the three. It turned out GTA 4 just needed a bit of flamboyance. Fabulous, as Gok Wan would have said. Modern Warfare 2 got in all kinds of issues when it featured a level which had you gunning down civilians in an airport in the infamous No Russian stage. Obviously, this upset a lot of people who didn't get the context of why it was happening in the game. Same as it ever was. Now on to the top 10, but first, the rules. As I display footage of important games of the year that didn't make my list, allow me to explain the rules as in previous entries. The games featured are here on the basis of when they were originally released, on one of the original formats they were released upon. The only exception to this rule is if the game is sufficiently different in its conversions, such as Bionic Commando or Double Dragon on the NES, or Turtles 4 on the Mega Drive, compared to the Super Nintendo one, say. I might not have played some of the games playing on screen at the moment, which is why they've probably missed out on the top 10 list that I've made, and I may have played some of them a lot later than their original release. They're all crackers though, you should try them. Mobile phone games were becoming the fastest growing market. Most of them, though, were money extortion exercises with you tapping a screen and then having to wait for something to happen, sometimes for 24 hours, unless you wanted to slip the publishers a $5 a day. Angry Birds was different, though. It was really good value, had free updates, and was a thoroughly entertaining action puzzle game which had you catapult avians at shaky constructs built by villainous green pig heads. Yeah, a real head scratcher at times, and seemingly installed one-to-one on iPhones for about 3 to 4 years hence. It would go on to be a cultural touchstone of sorts, with 2 whole movies, but has since been kind of lost in time, perhaps because of the amount that they whipped it to death with merch and sequels. It's a shame because the game still stands up today, and not just for porcine-hating ornithologists. I've been thinking a lot about Brutal Legend recently, largely thanks to Eddie Munson's shredding performance in the Stranger Things Series 4 finale. It reminded me a lot of the 80s heavy metal record Sleeves Come to Life that typified the worlds of Double Fine's Brutal Legend. A lot of this game feels a bit of a missed opportunity though. The later part of the game features loads of RTS sections that actually completely derail it, if I'm being honest. And overall the game is not as polished as some of its peers. Despite that, it's a fantastic tribute to the heyday of heavy metal, with its legions of creatures and grand hellscapes from the record sleeves, a cast of rock legends providing voices like Lemmy, Ozzy Osbourne, Lita Ford, and comedic A-list actor and Tenacious D frontman Jack Black. And of course, it also features 107 metal classics ranging from also-rans like Angel Witch to legends like Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. If only a few of these flaws could have been ironed out, this creative classic would be a lot higher in this list. Rock on, Tommy. Yes, that's a Cannonball quote. Brilliant. We're deep into the 7th generation now, an era characterised by late 20s to early 30s white, sad, edgy boys with short haircuts, moodily saving the grey and brown cities in which they live. No boy was more sad and edgy than Alex Mercer, the behooded bioweapon anti-hero on the run from the army in Activision's Prototype. Mercer is a strange fruit for a protag as he absorbs members of the public and turns part of his body into big gory stabby blades in his native New York. Not your typical hero, I'm sure you'll agree. His game is very good, however, which owes a lot to the likes of Spider-Man 2 and Hulk Ultimate Destruction. If you're after a challenging title with a big open world and a lot of scope to do pretty much anything you like when you get beyond a certain point, thanks to its variety of body horror powers, you could do a lot worse than Prototype. That said, you could also do very slightly better, such as the next entry. Yeah. Yes, much like Deep Impact and Armageddon, or Turner and Hooch and K9 getting released in the cinema at the same time, sometimes games companies can put out the same idea at exactly the same time. There was just a month in between these two. Infamous has its own huge city playground. Empire City is clearly based on New York, where Prototype was set. It has its own powered individual on the run from the authorities storyline, and also has its own short-haired, edgy super lad in Cole McGrath. What I'd say that Infamous has over Prototype, though, is a little bit more polish, and it also has a branching karma system that could see Cole go either to being a nice good boy or a dirty rascal. There isn't really a great deal to choose between the two, however, and to be honest, you'd be fine with either of them. However, I am just going to give the tiniest of edges to Sony's exclusive effort over Prototype. Sorry, Alex, don't turn into a big stabby axe and cut me head off or absorb my mum or anything. From Software invented a whole new genre with this. The visually stunning, lore-heavy, darkly lit adventures with vast Metroid-style maps, RPG character building, and steeper than San Francisco Hills difficulty curves. Yes, the Souls game. Not the best video game these talented lads have made, but it's a confident start for this genre that has reached an impossible to eclipse, surely high standard with 2022's Elden Ring. The high difficulty, if you can overcome it, give this classy title a rewarding feel that made it stand out in the 7th generation. There was a lot of games that looked exactly the same in this generation. That is not an argument that you can put towards this particular game, Demon's Souls. I swear too much when I originally played it and got way too frustrated, and so therefore have gone cold on its ilk ever since. But I can see that it's incredibly influential and a rich and detailed game, and indeed genre, that would be much higher on this list, probably of people that went from get good to got good. However, I never got good. I stayed bad, but stayed relatively unangry. There's nothing particularly impressive about Ghostbusters gameplay. It's very much a little Gears of War for most of its duration. However, I'm all about its packaging. Much like Brutal Legend, presentation is key with this title. In 2009, Terminal Reality and Atari managed to persuade Aykroyd, Hudson, Ramis and Bill Murray to reprise their roles for what many have described as Ghostbusters 3. Yes, 2 other actual Ghostbusters 3 movies have now appeared, but this one is probably the most authentic. It's set just after Ghostbusters 2, so the original crew are in their pomp. There's fan service galore with spooks and locations from the 80s movies, the music is there, and the script is occasionally very funny, with the leads of the movies showing the same sort of chemistry that won our hearts over back in the mid-80s. The mute lead you control is just really along for the ride, really. And what a peculiar ride it can be, with extra-dimensional locales like something from Doctor Strange or Inception present, which would have broken 1990s movie budgets. This was an absolutely fantastic tribute to one of the best beloved movies of the mid-80s. If Angry Birds was a phenomenon, Minecraft is, well, a lasting legacy. Such is its continuing popularity, a 12-year-old with a capture card can record footage off of it and eclipse in an afternoon my YouTube subscribers that I've struggled to attain in 5 years. Does that sound bitter? It is. Screw you, Notch, and your digital Lego. Visually, it's dire, but the blockiness is there for a reason. It's wonderfully simple to use, and even your nan can build a rudimentary house on survival mode to protect her from the night terrors of things like zombies and the creepers, or she could just create a big veiny shaft in the creative mode. People have made some truly awe-inspiring constructs in the past 13 years using this deceptively simple looking software, and ongoing regular updates just increase the possibilities of things that they can make. Also increases the amount of vastly more successful preteen YouTubers who don't put the effort in I do the little gits. You won't catch me using fart noises for laughs. Shut up, fart noise. Anyway, great game, success fully deserved. Assassin's Creed 1 was interesting, but not exactly jaw-dropping. It felt quite rinse and repeat with its assassinations, perhaps. Assassin's Creed 2, though, took that core gameplay mechanic and gave it a large amount of diverse meat around its bones. There was a lot more to do in AC2, and a lot of the key franchise mechanics are introduced here. The level of detail is improved also with NPCs behaving more naturally. This for me was the jumping on point for the series, and was for a lot of other people too. It became a yearly major franchise after this, along with the likes of things like Call of Duty and FIFA. While the subsequent sequels have varied massively in quality, and 13 years since it came out, that formula is perhaps getting a little bit stale. But Assassin's Creed 2 is still a fantastic open-world adventure and a worthy, deeper successor to the Prince of Persia series that preceded it. Much like Assassin's Creed 2, Uncharted's sequel confidently strode out of the shadow of its elder and presented an adventure that was so much more. Uncharted 2 is a Indiana Jones movie set in the present day. It is what all the FMV games of the Sega CD era were promising but couldn't deliver. It is an interactive cinematic experience. The immersive, thrilling, swashbuckling adventure is full of agile stunt work, premier voice acting, and tentpole blockbuster cheese plot making. I had a friend with no interest in playing the game at all, absolutely riveted to the action unfolding in front of him as he just watched me play. For a game as relatively linear as this, it probably has little right to be this high, and yet here it is at number 2. Truly, Uncharted 2 is a treasure worthy of its own Nathan Drake adventure. He wouldn't have to look far, he could just go and CEX and pick it up for a couple of quid. There have been many Batman games. I made a video recently about some of them, and I can tell you, there were a lot of Batman games. Some of them were exceptional, such as Batman by Sunsoft on the NES, or Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo by Konami. But it took until 2009's Arkham series starter, where we nerdy games playing public finally got to experience a typical night as Bruce Wayne's baddie bothering superhero. Things are going awry in the facility that houses some of Gotham's most troubled criminals and mischief makers, and it's up to the Dark Knight to go in and put a lid on the shady shenanigans by himself in that most foreboding of places, Arkham Asylum. He does this by doing a variety of Batmanish things. He uses his genius intellect and gadgets to solve clues. He strong-arms multiple inmates at a time using a smooth, visually impressive and much-aped fighting system. He can spread fear from the shadows of the rafters and pounce on unsuspecting goons. It's an incredible game, helped by a suitably foreboding gothic asylum dripping in detail from the comics. It is wrought with atmosphere, definitely in the discussion for best superhero game of all time, along with its sequel and the PS4 Spider-Man games. I would say it's definitely the game that has stayed with me the most from 2009, which is why it finds itself at number 1. Arkham Asylum is bloody brilliant. And that is my 5 years done for this year, meaning you'll have to wait until the next bout of global warming coming to us, where our skins will sear off our bones, for 2010 to 2014. And then, well, it might just be the last yearly chunk. Potentially. I don't know for sure yet. Sad times. We shall see. Until then, there's still plenty of content to come and have a look at, especially as I'm going to be concentrating a little bit more on the late 90s and 2000s era stuff than we've maybe done in the past. So don't go away just yet. However, if you like these, until next year, thanks, bye.